I left a dead body unwatched. I regret it more than you can imagine. Trigger warnings: violence and murder. Post-death rituals are sacred, not just for our kin, but for every soul that departs. Few understand why we keep vigil over the dead, or why tradition dictates that the body must never be left alone. I didn't understand it either, until the night I learned the truth firsthand. A few years ago, I worked as a night watchman at an abandoned factory, long gutted by fire. The place had a reputation. People said it was cursed, haunted by those who perished in the blaze. But my experience with the place was otherwise. It wasn't ghosts that worried me, it was the living. Kids from the neighborhood loved to sneak in, drawn by the thrill of the forbidden. My job was simple: keep them out. My shift started at 8. I would relieve the daytime security guard, check the grounds, ensure everything was locked, and then retire to my shed for a smoke. That night, the air was still, the factory unnervingly silent. Then I heard a scream, muffled, pained, dying. Faint, hurried footsteps echoed through the hollow corridors, vanishing into silence before I could place them. I followed the sound to the storage room, a place where shadows stretched unnaturally long. I knew the door had been shut when I checked the area at the beginning of my shift, but now it stood ajar. As I approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I kept glancing over my shoulder, but the corridor behind me remained empty. I stepped inside, and my legs nearly buckled beneath me. There, lying on the cold floor, was a young girl, her clothes soaked in blood. Her tattered, oversized hoodie was stained and riddled with holes. Her frayed jeans, stiff with filth, clung to her frail frame. The kind of wear that spoke of nights spent on the streets, of a life abandoned long before death claimed her. Her lifeless eyes stared at the ceiling. I approached with trembling hands, my breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The sight of her, so still, so violently lifeless, sent a cold dread curling in my gut. My skin prickled as if unseen eyes were watching. Careful not to step in the spreading pool, I knelt and pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Her neck was still warm, but she had no pulse. She was gone. I scanned the room. It was empty, but something else caught my eye. The dust on the floor bore more than her tracks. Another set of footprints led away. Someone had been here. Someone had fled. My heart pounded as I backed away and reached for my radio. I left the room, stepping into the hallway where the air felt marginally less oppressive. In the adjacent office, I fumbled with the radio to contact Central Dispatch. "Stay where you are, sir. Officers are en route," the dispatcher ordered. I almost stayed where I was, in the small office next to the storage room. I wanted to keep as much distance as I could between me and the corpse. But something gnawed at me, a weight in my gut, a feeling of dread that told me it wasn't over. I stepped back inside the storage room. The room was empty. The blood remained, congealing into dark rivulets, but the girl was gone. My breath hitched as a chill slithered down my spine. Then a draft brushed my face. The window, which was closed before, was now yawned open, a black void against the night. I looked up and she was there, perched on the windowsill, her body coiled unnaturally, an eerie distortion of human form. Her limbs jutted at grotesque angles, her elbows bending the wrong way, shoulders unnaturally high as if wrenched upward. Her neck lolled, stretched longer than it should have been, her head tilting, rolling slightly, as though barely attached by sinew. Each slow, deliberate movement made her joints pop wetly, an obscene mimicry of human motion. Her fingers, once delicate, had stretched into unnatural lengths, their joints protruding at odd angles. The nails, which might have once been trimmed, now jutted out like jagged claws, dark and cracked as if rotted from within. Her head cocked. She grinned, her lips parting far too wide, revealing teeth that were yellow and sharp. "Glad you never thought to guard the corpse," she rasped, her voice a guttural scrape, as if forced through vocal cords not her own. Then she moved. She didn't jump. She didn't climb. She moved. I wanted to run, but my body refused to listen. My breath caught in my throat as she slithered up the wall and onto the ceiling, her movements impossibly fluid. Her limbs bent the wrong way, shifting like a grotesque marionette as she crawled toward me, her back arched like a predator stalking its prey. And then she dropped. Her feet stuck to the ceiling, but the rest of her body lowered toward me, suspended upside down, her twisted face inches from mine. A cold weight settled in my chest, squeezing my lungs, my limbs frozen in place as terror clawed its way through me. Her breath was ice against my skin. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to wake up to escape the nightmare unraveling before me. The silence stretched. Then a cool breeze brushed my face. I opened my eyes. She was gone. The window stood wide open, the night beyond yawning and empty. My legs buckled, and I collapsed onto the floor. That's how they found me, shaking like a leaf in a storm, unfocused. It took the police a couple of days to take my statement because I was too delirious with fear and shock to speak coherently. I couldn't describe the girl. They obviously didn't believe my story. They marked the floor with evidence tape and took samples of the blood. But with no body and no leads, their investigation stalled. They kept me for questioning, but with no body, no weapon, and no trace of the girl, they had nothing to hold me on. In the end, they let me go. The factory was old and devoid of any CCTV cameras. They had little to go on, just the blood on the floor and a security guard whose story didn't fit normal patterns of this world. In the absence of substantial evidence, they had to let me go, though my company wasn't so kind. They fired me, which was fine by me. After what happened, I had no strength to go back to that place. I took my next job as a janitor at a food court. It's a decent job with enough pay to cater to my needs, but most importantly, I'm always surrounded by people. And I never work night shifts. You see, I come from a faith that believes in guarding the dead until their final rituals are complete. We believe the body is made up of 5 elements: sky, air, fire, water, and earth. Our bodies are vessels for the soul to fulfill its destiny. Once the destiny is fulfilled, the soul departs, and we must return the body to where it came from. Cremate the body and spread the ashes into the elements. But until that happens, the body is vulnerable to things that have no destiny to fulfill, no previous karma to atone for. Things that linger between life and death, rejected even by the bad place. Something from that realm was present that night, and when I stepped outside to make the call to dispatch, it found its opportunity. It took the empty vessel. Somewhere out there, it still hunts. It spared me last time, perhaps because I gave it exactly what it wanted. An unguarded body, but I fear if our paths cross again, this time I won't be so lucky.